Okay, welcome to the Halal Fantasy Football League Week 10 recap. Today's drink, I'm not done making it because I'm going to smoke it right now. It's a hickory chicory pecan old fashioned. Got the smoke in there. So it's basically, I use a Whistle Pig Rye, Demerara Sugar Cube, and I use bitters, and then I use the chicory pecan bitters, which is kind of coffee flavored, from a company out of New Orleans, and I smoked it with some hickory wood chips. So you can see like the little smoky effect right there. Ah. It's quite good. The last few recaps have been running a little long because I had some little extra features, so I'll try to keep it short this week. Had some pretty cool games, big upsets, exciting to watch for football wise. If you like rooting for underdogs, it was kind of a fun week. And injuries is huge this week. We did talk about how everyone's teams are trending up and trending down, and like maybe you had a trajectory as you were going up. If you got a big injury this week, it may have changed the trajectory of your team, and then vice versa. Like, because of injuries, some other guys have to step up. That has changed things for other people's teams too. So a lot of people got hurt, and big question marks, right? Like Josh Allen, was he gonna play? That was a big question mark. It made for a really, really exciting weekend. I had fun watching my team play. I know some of you had fun watching your teams win. Some had disappointing losses. And then also, was there the catch of the year? I mean, was there the greatest catch of all time, actually? We're going to take a look at that. So let's just go right into the recaps. Starting with Mia Milo versus Daddy Dandy Melch team. That's his me versus Gary. And what a turnaround, like, for me. Here was one where I was just constantly losing, and now I'm on a 2-game winning streak and I have the high score of the week. Mostly buoyed by Justin Fields, who out of nowhere just completely changed, right? If you watched him at the beginning of the year, you're like, oh man, not reliable. But I took a chance on him because he's a running quarterback, and just like with teams, right? They're going to change, they're going to try new things, and then maybe they'll be successful. They haven't been successful winning-wise because they've lost 2 in a row. But this is his second consecutive 40-point-plus game, so it was huge for him. Big score for me. And then if you look at for Gary's team, not really bad stat lines, right? Cousins in the 20s, Devontae Adams showing out in the 20s, and then double digits mostly, with the exception of Algier. Double-digit point games, so respectable for Gary, who had 110. I mean, this on a week when there was a bunch of only double-digit scores for a lot of the teams, at least half of you. Tough matchup because he went up against me. Like I said, Fields just carried me. I left some points on the board with Foreman. We'll come back to this because I think for me the big question mark was, well, he had a down week. And Chuba Hubbard is kind of back and healthy, so is he going to be the lead guy? I think that question is answered this week. Pickens had a running touchdown, so that buoyed him. DeAndre Swift only had 8.3. Still waiting for him to get healthy, but the touchdown kind of salvaged him. DK Metcalf only had 10.10. Would have been better out playing Pickens. Dalton Schultz is another one, right? No health at the beginning of the year, slowly coming healthy, and then starting to produce for me now. Jamal Williams, bell cow, 16 carries, a touchdown, got me 13.5, so pretty decent. And then like I said, for Gary, Devontae Adams is starting to improve, even though the Raiders are kind of stinking it up a bit right now. Warren starting to trend upwards and take carries from Najee Harris. Rondale Moore starting to improve and starting to look like a more reliable receiver outside of Hopkins in Arizona. This is a big surprise. Moreau, picking him up as a tight end, as a handcuff, because I guess Waller's injured, right? I think that's the case. And Gabe Davis had a big game, 18.3. Aaron Jones, though, had 25 points. Let's see if that would have been enough for you to beat me. Like, if you had replaced Algier with Aaron Jones, that would get you close, but not over the hump. So maybe not enough to get the win. Eric versus James. This one is one where Eric has had his second consecutive down week. So he's on a downswing. James had a really good game, mostly carried by CeeDee Lamb. If you look at for Eric, he went with Jared Goff because Burrow had a bye week. He had a better option for a receiver in Devontae Smith, who had 11.9. He kind of showed out a little bit today on Monday night. Waddle has surprisingly low score, 8.6. Deontay Johnson had only 8.3, so that was a tough break. And I think what has been really carrying Eric is Nick Chubb. He had a poor game by his standards, right? He's definitely a guy who you expect more out of. Dalvin Cook had a big game, 23.5. Taysom Hill only had 0.4. Jacobs had a big game, 21.7. And then he went with the San Francisco D, 6.8. So the early dividends have not paid off for San Francisco. According to Eric, he threw last week's game to get San Francisco. Off the bench, for Eric, like we said, Devontae Smith would have been a better choice, and everyone else kind of pretty average. For James, he played Tom Brady, who got the win, but had 19.82 points, and Tyreek Hill had 12.9. So Miami, despite getting the win and dominating Cleveland, I think what happened was they just went up early, and maybe they could just rely on the running game, and then they had some other wide receivers break out. DeAndre Hopkins, pretty good, 14.8. Robinson had a big game tonight, which kind of put the nail in the coffin for Eric. Christian McCaffrey had 17.1. Kittle, 1 reception for 21 yards, 2.6. Like we said, CeeDee Lamb, big game. And then off the bench, more kind of blah. Everett, only 3.3. Madison, only 2.7. Big game from, not big game, pretty decent games from the San Francisco guys, 10.4, but in 11.1. But I think he played the better guys. Next up, Automatic versus Hurt So Good. He played Carr, 20.32, which is decent. Oh, man. So, like we said, for the trends, Darren takes a big hit because Cooper Kupp has a high ankle sprain after only 3 receptions and -1 yards. So, I don't know how long he's going to be out. It's going to be tough for him. Juju had only 2 receptions for 33. Mostert had a pretty good game, 19.9. Chuba Hubbard, like I said, kind of looking like Deontay Foreman is going to be the lead back there. So unless he gets hurt, he looks like the bell cow. Hubbard will spell him, as it shows, only 5 rushing attempts and 14 rushing yards. Farmouth, okay, 5.6. Evans, only 7.9. Sanders has a good game, 11.2. And then the Atlanta D, not so good. Claypool only had 1.3. Ugh. And then Amari Cooper, only 4.7. I might have played him instead, but I mean, it didn't really make a difference because he didn't really do so good as, what is that team called? As the Cleveland Browns got smashed by Miami. Jalen Hurts tonight, upset. They got upset tonight. He threw some picks. He threw 1 pick, and there was a bunch of Washington just showed up and shut them down. So there's no undefeated team left. Jalen Hurts though was able to get a respectable 25.1. Carter is a good pickup for you, Mike, because as the 2 top Chargers receivers have been down, he's got the lion's share of the targets. Mooney, 7.7. Chicago is basically a running team, and it's mostly Justin Fields. Leonard Fournette did okay, 12.7. Latavius Murray down 7.1. Travis Kelce had a big game, 17.1. Curtis Samuel only 5.4. Again, another one who's tough to rely on only because of the way their offense is. Butker down to 3. I know you were hanging on to him even though he was injured, but they didn't really need anything other than those 3 extra points, so you didn't get much from him. Tennessee D did pretty good. MVS did good. Minnesota D was slightly better than Tennessee, and that was the big surprise this week was that Minnesota upset. We'll talk a little bit more when we get to that catch of the century, possibly. Blitz and Ritz versus Brownsville Jets. Mike has been hurt because he's been trending downwards. Tua has been a great backup for Lamar Jackson. And then who knows? I mean, the way that Lamar Jackson has been playing, maybe you go with Tua because he's been kind of, I don't know. Jackson has been looking kind of mediocre lately. Austin Eckler had a down game, 10.4. And that was kind of brutal for them. I don't know what's happening. It seems like I don't know what it is. Like with Eckler, either you don't have enough of a receiving game and he balls out, or the receiving game is so bad that it affects the running game and they're trying to play catch up. He's hit or miss, Eckler. I don't know. Donovan Peoples-Jones, good pickup, only because he's just solid. Like he gives you a floor, right? Double digits every single week, even though it's the low end double digits. Kareem Hunt only had 3 points. Tyler Higbee had big scores, maybe because of like how the receivers have been going downhill and the fact that Cooper Kupp got hurt. Trying to play Wan'Dale Robinson, he had 1 rushing attempts for -5 yards and 2 receptions for 20 yards, so not a lot there. Carlson, I mean, I would have played him too because you're playing against Houston, but I guess most of the target shares went elsewhere. Carlson only had 2, and then the Jets D, again, smart trying to play them against Houston, give you a respectable 9.8. As far as the bench, McLaurin had a big game tonight, 16.8, 8 receptions, 128 yards. Connor had a big game, 24.2. Herbert only 9.38. Montgomery only 5.8. So you have the 2 good running backs. It's all going to Justin Fields for now. Rashad White, 13.9, which is pretty decent. So Richie's in a good spot. He did play Etienne, and then I think maybe the mileage is kind of catching up a little bit. But he still had a pretty decent game, 9.9, even though they kind of lightened his load this week. And then for Mike, Deebo Samuel, 6.5 only. Off the bench, it was a bye week for Jackson, Drake, and Brown. No. Brown didn't have a bye week. Brown just hasn't been playing yet. Woods is only 2. Melvin Gordon, 9.7. So maybe it bodes well for him because he did pretty good with limited carries. And then McKenzie, 7.6. Tough break for Mike because he has been slightly trending down. Unless there's a little bit of a turnaround with Deebo Samuel, and then maybe playing Tagovailoa instead of Lamar Jackson. Or you know what? Maybe Lamar Jackson just goes crazy. As you can see, when the running quarterbacks just go nuts, it can totally flip the game. So that's kind of like what he needs right now. And then he also needs Eckler to get back to form. Captain Morgs versus Super Mariota. This game was, I don't know. I feel like Morgan could have won this game, but one was a boo-boo by him. He played Josh Reynolds, who was out for the week. And there was sufficient notice, but he didn't swap him out. And then the other tough one is Jerry Jeudy getting hurt early in the game where he left with a donut. Injuries hits him again too because A.J. Brown got dinged up tonight. And then after that, he wasn't really used all that much. I mean, they targeted him slightly, but they kind of went away from him. And I think Devontae Smith and a few others had more of the target share. Dak Prescott did okay, 24.3. That's kind of a nice, a good backup to Josh Allen, who by all accounts was not going to play this week. So maybe that's why Morgan thought he was going to throw this. I feel like they just weren't honest about his elbow because they were saying how bad it was and how like he wouldn't be able to play. But he looked totally fine in that game. Turned out to be one of the greatest games of the week. He blew it by throwing that pick at the edge of the end zone in overtime. Benjamin only 0.4. Gibson, pretty decent night, 15.26. Carlos Sutton was the better of the 2 wide receivers, only because Jeudy got hurt. So, I mean, he lost by about 20 points, right? So if you plug in Sutton, that's about half of that. And then if you put someone else here like Gibson tonight, Morgan wins this game. Tough break for Morgan. Part of it was missing on Reynolds, and then the other one was just a tough break with Judy getting hurt. And then also AJ Brown getting hurt. Because who knows, if AJ Brown has a big game before tweaking his leg, then maybe he shows out. And then Brad was able to steal a win because of that. Mariota getting 20.94. Gallup is back. He actually looked pretty good, so maybe as a warm-up game, this is pretty good. So maybe he could be more of a reliable target going forward. Only because CeeDee Lamb is like, he's one of those boomer bust guys, right? He's either going to give you big points or not. Hollins only had 2.9. Darrell Henderson, 10.3. And only because of that touchdown, because his usage wasn't that high, but at least that touchdown really helped. Najee Harris still gets a lot of the target share, the large share with the 20 carries, 99 rush yards. It's just Warren has been a little bit more efficient. But it was enough. He's just on target of what they projected. Knox had 7.7. Justin Wilson had a big game, 23. So who knows, man? I don't know. That's where all the points went to. Like, as you saw, Miami's got a big lead. The two top receivers didn't do so hot. Wilson had a good game, so maybe they just ran it out with Wilson. So, like we said, he went from his stock taking a hit because of McCaffrey joining, and then he gets traded away to a better situation, and then the early returns after I think this is the second week, is very positive going forward. Matt Gay only had 6.1. Philadelphia D had 7.6. They had some turnovers, but they gave up 32 points in the end. Allen Robinson only had 6.4. And here's a big one. Remember we talked about Kadarius Toney? Possibly a guy who can help turn his season around, because he had 17.64 points. The way they used him wasn't a whole lot, but like we said, he's a talented guy. If you watch him, he's like one of those guys who cuts so quick and hard, and it's hard to catch. So you put him in the right situation, which might be with Kansas City, and then maybe Brad has something going for him in the future. And then the last one, mediocre minions versus riding with Mahomes. Jeremy takes the L. He had a down week just across the board. And then Aaron is still riding high. So, change his name because he didn't get Jeremy's best game this week. If you look at Jeremy, he only had 15.64 from Justin Herbert. Like we said, missing his top two receivers and relying on some younger guys and the running game. Stephon Diggs had a pretty good game, 18.8, high targets, 12 receptions and 128 yards. I don't know what happened to Mecole Hardman. I didn't really follow, but maybe he's injured, so he takes donut from him. Derrick Henry had a down week. For Tennessee, they didn't really need him all that much because they got the win elsewhere. They were able to get the win from passing and Tannehill. Singletary had a pretty good game, 17.5. Hawkinson, a decent 8. Cordarrelle Patterson, kind of a down game, 6.4. Suckup, only 3. Los Angeles Chargers, only 3.8. And then off the bench, he had Michael Pittman, 8.8. Lockett had a decent game, 11.7. Any of those guys would have been better than Mecole Hardman. Garoppolo had 18.3, which surprisingly had a better game than Justin Herbert. Pacheco, 8.8, and Chris Olave, 5.5. Dubs is still hurt. Talking about guys who could kind of like help your team going forward, Pacheco, he had 16 carries. So that's kind of eye-opening, and maybe that might be a signal that they are shifting from CEH to Pacheco. Because if you do watch Pacheco play, he looks like a legit back. And it may signal the end of the Clyde Edwards-Helaire experiment. And if they do, that's more power for Jeremy. For Aaron, he's riding high with Mahomes, 35.44, who looked like the best quarterback of the week. And then Justin Jefferson. Big time Justin Jefferson. 10 receptions, a career high 193 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Okay, the big play is that 4th and 18 play where Jefferson catches what some are considering the greatest catch of all time. Situationally, it's crazy, right? It's what they do to tie the game, to keep them in the game so they can go to overtime. Now, when I was hearing it, when I saw like little glimpses of it, I was like all aboard, like I was gonna hype it up. But the more I watched it, the more pissed off I got, because they were saying it's a one-handed catch, 4th and 18, keeps the game alive, keeps them in the position to be able to win. What really, really pissed me off was maybe it's a slow motion, but his defender has 2 hands on the ball, so he's securing it for him, and then I give credit to Justin Jefferson ripping it away with 1 hand, but that's like the 3 points of contact to keep it safe, right? I'm more pissed off at the defense for not batting it down. So I don't know. Does it hurt it in my eyes? It hurts it a little bit because the comparison is obviously OBJ in the playoffs with that crazy one-handed catch. And then we're also comparing it early in the year to George Pickens. Ridiculous. I don't know what angle he was in, one-handed catch at the edge. Situationally, this was very, very key moment in the game. The other one was a playoff game, so that was a little bit bigger. But what really, really hurts it for me, that defense, man. Stupid. What are you doing going for an interception on 4th and 18? What are you doing? And it cost them the win, eventually, in the long run. Because Buffalo goes on to lose in overtime to Minnesota. Minnesota had like the most quietest, like 7-1 record until this point, and they finally can make their statement game. So good for them. So that's my rant about Justin Jefferson. Big time. It helped Aaron get like the 2nd highest score of the week. It solidifies Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 2, just behind Stephon Diggs. Saquon Barkley had a big game. Palmer is one of those guys who I said has been like trending upwards, taking a lot of the target shares from the top 2 guys. Like we said, Barkley, 26 points. They just made him. They just fed him 35 rushing attempts, 152 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, a receiving. So it's kind of funny because they're like, I heard the news was they couldn't get a contract done, and so they says, fine, we'll just keep giving it to you. We'll just wear you down. Naheem Hines only had 2.4, Goddard 8.8, decent. He did kind of get hurt and had that fumble, despite getting face masked. Brandon Cooks only 6.3. Tyler Bass, man, big time, 15.3 from a kicker. And then the Denver D only 4.8. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did nothing. T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd out with a bye. Geno Smith, a decent 22.9. Kyron Williams, okay, so this is our first look at him, and he gave 5.5. Let's see if he can take over that backfield going forward. Definitely a possibility because he's a rookie with no mileage on him at all. And then Buffalo, 9.6. Yeah, so that's it, man. Anyway, we'll just keep it short this week. Say that. And I just had a 30-minute session. So, it's getting interesting. Some of the guys who were good are just kind of on a slide, and some of the guys who were bad are on a run. So, we'll see what happens.